Welcome to Be Less Stupid. I'm your host, Jon Hotchkiss. Members of Team Trump who say that they did not know that Mike Flynn was going to talk to the Russian ambassador about the Obama sanctions, they're all lying. That is not a hypothesis. It's not a conjecture, and it's not partisan fake news either. Steve Bannon knew. Reince Priebus knew. Sean Spicer knew. Transition Special Counselor Katie McFarland, she knew too. Donald Trump knew, and so did Mike Pence. Here now is the proof. In an article that is dated December 2nd, 2017, the New York Times says that they saw, not that they heard about or that they had read to them, that they saw an email dated December 28th, 2016, that was written by Katie McFarland, that was sent to Mike Flynn, Sean Spicer, Reince Priebus, Steve Bannon, and two other Trump transition team advisors, likely Mike Pence and Kellyanne Conway, all of whom were together at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump, except for Pence, who was in Indiana, and Flynn, who was in the Dominican Republic. Now, in this email, Katie McFarland bemoans the imposition of new sanctions against Russia by the Obama administration that had been imposed earlier in the day. She says that she's afraid they will box Trump in terms of future policy goals with Russia, plus it could delegitimize Trump's presidential victory. So in this email, she outlines a plan that she has discussed with other Trump transition officials. The plan is for Flynn to call the Russian ambassador and tell him not to overreact to Obama's new sanctions for meddling in the U.S. election, because the incoming Trump administration would reverse the sanctions in a month when they take office. Now, in the special counsel's charging documents against Mike Flynn, Mueller says that on the day the Obama administration announced the new sanctions, Mike Flynn called a senior presidential transition official at Mar-a-Lago who was with the other transition officials to discuss the sanctions. The charging document against Flynn adds that during her discussion with Flynn, McFarland said, quote, "Members of the transition team do not want Russia to escalate the situation," meaning McFarland had discussed her Russian fears with her colleagues, Spicer, Priebus, and Bannon. The charging document versus Flynn goes on to say, quote, "After his phone call with the Russian ambassador, Flynn spoke with senior members of the presidential transition team about his conversation with the Russian ambassador regarding the U.S. sanctions and Russia's decision not to escalate the situation." Note, Mueller does not say he spoke with just McFarland or with a senior member, singular. He says he spoke to senior members, plural. The senior members of the transition team are Bannon, Priebus, Spicer, McFarland, and perhaps Jared Kushner and Kellyanne Conway. Mueller says that the FBI knows what Mike Flynn did, that he discussed it with McFarland, who then put it in an email that was circulated to the transition team, all of whom are together that day in Mar-a-Lago. Now, back to January 24th, 2017. 2 days after the inauguration, the FBI asked to meet with Mike Flynn. They tell him that the meeting is going to be about his Russia contacts. The FBI asks him if he talked sanctions with the Russian ambassador. Flynn says no. The FBI gives him another chance to correct the record and unlie. He doesn't. You see, it appears that during their secret surveillance of Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, U.S. intelligence picked up Flynn's December 28th call, and they had a transcript of what he talked about. Now, you remember Sally Yates? This is the reason that she got fired as Attorney General, because when she hears that Trump wants to hire Flynn to be the National Security Advisor, she tells Don McGahn, that's Trump's lawyer, that Flynn is now compromised. You see, Flynn is telling people he did not talk to Russia about sanctions, but that's a lie. So Russia could use that against him and blackmail him. So now Trump has to fire Flynn. And the excuse that Trump gives is that Flynn lied to Pence about his Russia contact. I'm reading now from the document released today by the Mueller investigation. It says that the defendant repeated the same false statements, that he didn't talk sanctions to multiple members of the presidential transition team, including Vice President Pence, Chief of Staff Priebus, and Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Only here's the thing. As we now know from the New York Times, Spicer, Priebus, and Bannon knew Flynn spoke to Russia because those three guys talked through a plan about how to deal with Russia and the sanctions with Katie McFarland, who memorialized said plan in an email that was sent back to each of them, an email that the New York Times says that they saw. Now, my question is, if the New York Times saw McFarland's email, why hasn't the special prosecutor? But wait, there's more. We've also been led to believe that Mike Pence, who was in Indiana on the day Katie McFarland's memo was sent from Mar-a-Lago, that he'd been kept in the dark about Flynn's Russian ambassador plan. If this were true, that would mean that at least 4 of Pence's subordinates on the transition, remember, Pence is in charge of the transition, that 4 subordinates have kept Pence in the dark about the plan that they hatched to have Flynn call Russia. That just isn't likely. I believe Pence knew. In fact, I'm 100% certain Pence knew. And well, here's the proof. You see, Katie McFarland sent that original email first to Tom Bossert, who then forwarded it to Spicer, Bannon, and Priebus, along with 2 others. However, Bossert doesn't just forward the email, he adds his own response. And I'm quoting now from the Mueller document. Bossert adds, quote, "Defend election legitimacy now." Defend election legitimacy now. That is an important phrase, so I'm going to say it again. Defend election legitimacy now. Now, just a few days after the email was sent, a high-ranking Trump transition official made his first address to the nation. In that address, he did exactly what Tom Bossert suggested. He defended Trump's election legitimacy. It was a speech that was given by Mike Pence.
Perhaps that's why there's been such a concerted effort by some in the mainstream media to delegitimize this election. Perhaps that's why there's been such a concerted effort by some in the mainstream media to delegitimize this election and to demean our incoming administration.
Pence knew! Mike Pence clearly knew. Tom Bossert said they needed to defend election legitimacy now, and that is what Mike Pence did. And now Donald Trump. Trump knew too. According to the New York Times, at 5 o'clock on December 29th, a few hours after the email exchange between McFarland and Bossert, who forwarded the email to Team Trump, remember, Donald Trump, the president-elect, was supposed to meet with McFarland, Flynn, Priebus, Spicer, and Steve Bannon. Now, assuming that meeting took place, are we to assume that these 5 kept this gigantic secret from the incoming president? Or perhaps we should trust Michael Cohen, who has pled guilty and will serve 3 years in jail. Michael Cohen, who today told George Stephanopoulos that nothing happens in Donald Trump's orbit without Donald Trump's approval. Of course, Donald Trump knew. Okay, that is it for this edition of Be Less Stupid. If you enjoy my work, I hope that you will please share it on social media and tell your friends to subscribe. That'd be a huge help. As soon as we reach 40,000 subscribers, I'm going to release the first episode of my new 6-hour series, This versus That. And remember, it's going to be totally free, no commercial interruptions, nothing. Just 6 one-hour episodes, and they're going to be free. Anyway, that's it. I will see you next time on Be Less Stupid.